Hey guys, welcome to another Reaper blog video. Today I'm talking with Vijay Rathinam, and he has designed the trailer for The House Next Door. It's a horror film, and he did the trailer in Reaper, and he did all the sound effects in Reaper. The actual film was mixed in Pro Tools, but using everything that he edited and created. We have a couple videos, this one and another one explaining all of his templates and workflow for working with Pro Tools, going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. Vijay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me in the show. I'm a big fan of Reaper blog. I've been following your blog for a while now, ever since I started using it. I learned to use Reaper by watching your videos. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Could you tell us a bit about The House Next Door?
The House Next Door is a horror film produced by Viacom 18 Motion Pictures India and Itaki Entertainment. The sound team, we actually have, there's four of us. There's myself and Mr. Vishnu Govind and Sri Shankar. We three of us designed the film, and then it was mixed by Vishnu, who is also a sound designer on the project, and he's one of the mixer, and Rahmadullah, he's the other mixer. So there's two mixers and three sound designers in this project. And then we have, of course, we have a Foley crew and all that. So that's the crew information. This is basically a horror film, first of its kind. In India, it's an out and out horror film. The story actually happens in the northern part of India. Where a family moves in to a house, as the title suggests, House Next Door. But typically the horror happens in if you watch a lot of horror movies, the story, the plot is pretty much the same in all the horror movies. There's always someone moving into a house, where you have ghosts in the house or some paranormal activity happening there, and then the plot is pretty similar to almost all horror movies, but it's about how you handle that plot and make it interesting. And I think director Milind Rao of the film has made it really interesting. The film has some great music composed by Girish Gopalakrishnan, and he has done a very good job in collaborating with the sound designers. And we've done a lot of back and forth working. He would give us his temp tracks. We didn't use any temp tracks. When I say temp tracks, I don't mean royalty-free music in this film. This was actually written by the director and the producer. The producer is also the lead actor of the film, Siddharth. So this film was conceived by Siddharth and Milind. They wrote this, and it's based on a true story. For example, when we talk about sound and music, when they conceived a certain scene, they sort of bring in the music composer early on, and they compose a theme for it. And after they shoot, they use that theme and edit the scene. And then, when I get the picture lock, well, not exactly a picture lock, because we've kept on changing the edits for more than, 12, 13 times we have changed the edits during the production. So when I got a picture version, I would have composed music for that scene. So I would have to design my sound around that. Or sometimes it's the other way around. The sound design team, we would design the scene, and we would then put a temp mix to the composer, and he would construct music around that. So it's a collaborative process throughout the sound editorial, of this film. And the film story, basically, a family moves into a house which is a neighboring house of the lead actor. So a family moves in there, and the girl in the family gets possessed, or that's how it seems at the beginning. And then it all starts like that, and then the story moves on towards the flashback of why these people are haunted in that house, what's really happening. Parts of it is true of the story, and the rest is dramatized. Of course, they're all highly dramatized. So that's something about the film.
Okay, let's watch the trailer.
Jenny, आंखें बंद करो. इस टिकिंग साउंड पे ध्यान दो। तुम्हें मेरे सवालों का जवाब देना है। क्या तुम्हें ये जगह पसंद नहीं है? क्या तुम वापस अपने पुराने घर जाना चाहते हो?
वो हमें घर से जाने को कह रही है।
नए पड़ोसी, क्या लगता है इंटरेस्टिंग होंगे?
हाय आंटी, मैं जेनी, ये सारा। हम पास वाले घर में रहने आए हैं।
Hi little girl, what are you looking at? उस घर में हो क्या रहा है?
Our child is possessed.
I'm a brain surgeon. I'm 100% sure Jenny is not possessed.
उसने अपने मन में कुछ कहानियां बनाना शुरू कर दिया है और अब वो इन इमेजिनरी कहानियों को सच मान रही है। डॉक्टर, एक्चुअली इसका कोई मेडिकल इलाज नहीं है।
ये एक्सॉर्सिज्म जेनी का ट्रीटमेंट ही है।
ये हमारी जेनी नहीं है, इसके अंदर कुछ और है।
जो कुछ भी हो रहा है, I need to know why it's happening.
Can you take us through your session and the kinds of sounds that you added to the trailer?
This trailer, I have the effects tracks in Reaper. It was mixed partly in Reaper and partly in Pro Tools. When I say partly, what I mean is the music and dialogue were playing in Pro Tools, and the sound effects was edited in Reaper and delivered to the mix stage in Reaper. And we ran Pro Tools and Reaper as ReWire, host and slave. Pro Tools being the host and Reaper being the ReWire slave. So basically, Reaper is feeding in Pro Tools a 5.1 FX stem, which has the hits and impacts and all kinds of effects that you heard in the trailer. What I have for this demonstration is I have a stem printed. I mean, if you see my Reaper's project, you will see these two tracks, which are routed to a folder, and it says stems from Pro Tools. So this is basically a dialogue stem that came from Pro Tools, which was during the mix. All these multi tracks were playing from Pro Tools, and this is the mix of the music stem. Of course, in Pro Tools, all these tracks were playing as individual tracks instead of one stem. So for this demo purposes, I bounced out a 5.1 from Pro Tools music and a 5.1 dialogue. I mean, the trailer starts with the metronome going on. The metronome actually, there's an interesting scene in the film where there is a psychiatrist who is trying to analyze the girl because the girl behaves possessed, and at first nobody in the house believes that she's possessed. So everybody thinks that she's got some kind of a mental issue. You know, she's going through some trauma or something like that. So they bring in a psychiatrist and they try to hypnotize the girl to find out what's going on. So this is basically from the film. So this particular sample I've used for the metronome is the same sample I used in the film, in the actual film.
Okay.
There's very little sounds that I've used from the film. This is one, and then there's the door knocking that you will hear in the trailer. When the girl is in the bathroom, you will hear the door being knocked, like fisted, pounded. It's really heavy door knocking there. Those samples I used from the film. There's a bit where a telephone is being thrown from a room when the girl is walking on the corridor. That particular sound was taken from the film. And then there's an exorcism scene at the end of the trailer where you have some voices of the girl in the exorcism. those sounds are taken from the original film. And yeah, and of course, there's a big scream. The chair is flying. The classic chair is flying exorcism bit where the girl screams. Apart from that, all the other bits I cut. I created them from the scratch for the trailer.
And you were telling me the other day when we were chatting, the reason you can't just start off with your sound effects stem from the actual film using the same cuts that they used for the video edit is because there's not enough time to build up any of the effects.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, in a horror film, the way we give the scare is we kind of set up the scare. So let's say we have a scare as per the script. Let's say we need to scare people off at third minute. If that is the case, I would have to start building up to that moment. Well before, much ahead, maybe 2 minutes prior to that, or 2.5 minutes prior to that. I may build up to that by maybe adding some moody drones or some really eerie sounds and start building up to that crescendo. And it is at that moment that you throw something on the face, or it could be the other way around. I can start taking things down and make everything much quieter and create that dynamic range that is required to scare you. This is a trick that's been used in a lot of horror films. I mean, some of my favorite horror films are like the old William Friedkin's Exorcist and movies like Omen, and all these movies have used this trick. And this is an age-old trick which sound mixers and sound designers have used for a long time, and it proves that it works every time. Yeah. I mean, typically in a horror movie, you will see they either add some elements to it or they take things down and they make everything quieter. And the moment it's human nature when somebody is talking to you, and when somebody is talking to you in a very subtle voice, you naturally start paying more attention to it. So it kind of sucks you in. Yeah. So it's the same idea here. I mean, if we have a busy party, and then if we are supposed to scare someone in a busy party, at some point in the scene, we would start turning everything down and then creating that dynamic range. The moment everything starts going down, you naturally start paying more attention and, getting yourself into it. And then when you're really in, we throw something at you in your face, and that kind of scares you. But in a trailer, I mean, this trailer is basically 2 minutes and 7 seconds long. The first thing that I thought is, okay, I can use all these stuff that we made for this film, and we can use this in the trailer. We found that the trailer is only 2 minutes and 7 seconds long, and we couldn't create that kind of we didn't have that room to create that build-up. So we decided to use only selected sounds from the film and then reconstruct the whole thing. And also the music in the trailer is also dynamic. This trailer was cut for this music. So basically the director came up with the idea of this is how the trailer is going to be. And the music was composed for that. And then the picture was edited for the music, and the music had so much space in it. So I can still do some hits and whooshes and all these kind of stuff. And the music had room to allow all these things. So as a team, we decided to use new elements for trailer instead of just copying what we have from the film.
You're telling me that this trailer mix didn't really take you that long at all. I think you said 4 hours?
Yeah, we edited this trailer in 4 hours because we knew what we had to do in this trailer, because at this time we'd already finished the film. So we were very clear on, the director has been very clear from the very start on what he wanted. Both the director and producer had very clear vision on this is how we want the film to be. And the composer is also taking us in the right direction through his music. we knew what we had to do. It always takes time when you don't know the direction that you have to sort of move in. In this trailer, we knew what we had to do, what was expected of us, so we followed that, and it helped to finish it fast.
So even though you had to basically start from scratch on all the sound effects or finding new sound effects to fill the trailer, you're still able to do it really quickly. Do you think that is your experience with your tools, or is that something that Reaper helped you with?
Reaper definitely helped me. I actually started using Reaper when I started this film, which is about 6 to 8 months ago. So I haven't been using Reaper for a long time. But when I started this film, I wanted to have another platform where I could do all these kind of processing. And I found Reaper through David Farmer's videos. And I really saw what he did on those tutorials, and I was like, wow, this is something that I should learn. And I started learning this, and I did some bits and pieces for the film in Reaper. Not just bits and bits. I did a fair bit in Reaper, and then I bounced them out as stems and took it to Pro Tools. Like, for example, that exorcism scene. We did a lot of voice processing in Reaper with ReaPitch. ReaPitch was really good because we created some kind of off-key harmonies with a voice. Basically, we took a voice. Let me show you. One example is that, for example, this voice. I would pitch shift this to maybe 5 semitones, and then add another shifter and shift this another 8 semitones, and then add another shifter and maybe have that 1 octave lower. So this kind of creates like a really disturbing harmony on a voice. This was helpful, for some of it. And then for some of it, I used some voices like a black cat, maybe, sometimes a donkey, sometimes a walrus, sometimes an elephant. There's some of my voice in there for the lady, because sometimes she goes really. There's a part. There's the exorcism scene where she starts making these weird sounds and weird faces. So when there are moments where you hear a man's voice through her, but you won't be able to notice it is man's voice, but it is kind of pitched up so that it still has that feminism, but it is not exactly feminine. And there's my partner Vishnu's voice as well in there, and then there's like donkey, all these kind of animals, beasts blended in and pitch shifted. For all these kind of pitch shifting, I found Reaper really, really, really easy. All I just had to do is just hold Option and just pull it out like this, and just turn the preserve pitch off, and that's it. It will pitch shift, and the pitch shift. I found the pitch shifting algorithm in this is really, really powerful, and also stretch markers. I was using a lot of stretch markers for manipulating the pitch here and there. So I found them very useful. And the other reason is also the fact that my library is, I'm more of a metadata freak. If you look at my library, I have all these things organized, cataloged. In my SoundMiner, all these libraries are, very well, nicely cataloged. So I can just search and audition the stuff that I want and find what I want with ease. So SoundMiner is an essential part of my workflow in finding what I need. So all the metadata is, most of them is, it comes from the manufacturers themselves, like Sound Ideas or Pro Sound Effects Master or the Hollywood Edge stuff. All of these are very nicely, they come with great metadata. So it's easier for you to search and find the ones that you need faster.
What were some of the keywords that you found useful for designing a horror trailer?
I would split this trailer in a few ways. Number one, this trailer consists of a lot of whooshes. So of course, whooshes was one of the hard whoosh, soft whoosh, slow whooshes, fast whooshes. But of course, I can make them faster or soft or slower in Reaper as well by pitch shifting them. Some of the whooshes that I've used are from fire, from water, or some wind. I could make a Doppler from a wind or a sea wave and filter them out so that it doesn't feel like water anymore. And the clip effects, the take effects thing is really cool for these kind of things. Like for example, for this kind of maybe I would use EQs like Freeform from Melda. Have you heard of that?
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, it's really powerful. It gives you 60 dB of gain reduction, so you can pretty much draw on it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it can make some really weird. I mean, you take a wind and make crickets out of it. It's so powerful, and you can basically draw your curve like that, and you can make a cricket out of a wind, or and then if you put a tremolo on top of that, it would make it even more crickety, and maybe add some little bit of reverb into it.
Yeah.
So this is one of the really powerful EQs that I used for this film. And then Fab Filter, that's also really powerful. The Pro Q2. These two were my go-to EQs on this. This also can do 30 dB of gain reduction. So this is also powerful. So I would take some, I don't know, maybe wind or something, and then filter it out so that it's more like instead of a high wind.
Yeah.
And then maybe boost the low end extensively, pitch shift them, and maybe throw in a Doppler from waves or something. Sometimes when the Doppler didn't work, I would use the stretch marker and stuff like that. Maybe a sweep. So all these kind of things. It depends on what I'm doing with what is my source element and how I want it to sound like in the trailer.
When I was exploring the session you sent me, I noticed you were using some automation items on volume for like a really interesting fluttering effect.
Yeah, one of the 5.1 ones. Yeah, here. This is basically a scream of the girl. I have basically like a rising tone. It's basically a reversed whoosh, which I rendered in a 5.1. I found the automation items very useful because, like, for example, I can just draw an automation like this and show you what I mean. Have the LFO set to parametric, and then or triangle. Actually, in that case, I was using triangles, and then cycles. If I increase a cycle, it basically creates a stutter. And if I want the stutter to start slower at the beginning, and then or slower beginning and then go faster towards the end, I can use the frequency skew that made it. And if I use it the other way around, it starts off faster and it goes slower. And if I want the, if I change the baseline, it started doing this, and that gave me control over, the volume of the stutter. And the amplitude also, it gave me control over the or the amount of stuttering, rather. So I found this really easy way of creating stutters. And the best part about the automation items is that you could save this as a preset, and then I could just let me show you. I could make a automation item, and if I want stutter on this, I would just load. I have some preset stutters automation that I've preserved, like progressive stutter. So this is basically looping for that length. So No, that's it. That's a stutter. That's a progressive stutter. The looping part of that is also interesting. And the automation item feature came out like 3 or 4 days just before I started editing this trailer. So I was like, wow, that's a cool feature that I could use for this trailer. So I found that very useful. So I've made some kind of stutter effects, maybe 2 or 3 places in this trailer.
Yeah. I'll play an example now. Maybe we can go through some examples of what's happening in the LFE group.
The LFE group is something that I always like to cut the LFE as a separate group. It's a habit that I picked up from working in Pro Tools, because in Pro Tools, the LFE fader in Pro Tools is a post fader send. So during the mix, if I want to increase the volume of a certain track, if that track is routed to, if I have some send to the LFE, what happens is if I increase the volume of this, naturally the volume on the subwoofer, the LFE channel, also goes up. And I didn't like that, and I wanted to have a separate control for LFE. Earlier on, I used to do a separate send for it instead of using separate tracks. That was okay. It gave me some control, but then I wanted to cut separate elements for the LFE, maybe more filtered to give a better size. I mean, in the trailer, you may have seen me use some pink noise, or even sine tones, or square waves, sort of 40, 50, 60 hertz, 80 hertz kind of, square waves, filtered pink noise, and stuff like that for impacts, and even distorted tones for the impacts. So, I started cutting LFE tracks as a separate group, and that's the habit that you see in Reaper as well. So I have a separate track where I cut these kind of low frequency effects, and I basically bus them to a folder. And in the folder, I have a simple one band filter, low pass at 150 hertz at 24 dB per octave slope.
Excellent.
And I have these, maybe you might see some stretch markers here as well here in one of these tracks. It's basically a heartbeat when she sits on the toilet. You hear the door being banged regularly, like quite often, and then she's scared and she goes back and she sits in her toilet seat, and you find she's actually sitting on the ghost. So I have like kind of a heartbeat, starting slow, and then it goes higher and higher in tempo. So for those kind of effects, I used the stretch marker.
So I think that's a good place to end. Thank you so much for sharing this session with us. It's really cool to see, just to see inside anyone's session. There's always so much to learn, and to see what's happening in such a high profile film is really awesome. Just being able to see Reaper being used, in games and films and all over is amazing, because it feels like such an underdog sort of DAW, right? But it's so powerful.
Yeah, you would think that, you would think people who are not familiar with this platform may think that, wow, what can this do? But yeah, when I started using it, I was like, wow, this is something that I really need to get my hands on. And then I started learning it. It was a different learning curve for me, because when I, coming from the Pro Tools environment, that's why David Farmer's videos really helped me, and your videos as well. In fact, I would say more on David Farmer's video, because David Farmer's video directly related to my kind of scenario where, you've been a Pro Tools user for years. I've also used other DAWs like Nuendo and all that at the earlier part of my career. But, coming from Pro Tools, you've been using Pro Tools for many years, and you've always had to go around and do this kind of pitch shifting things with many plugins and all that. So the moment I saw Reaper, was like, wow, this is something else. The ability to have third-party plugins on items, automation per take, all these kind of things, like were fascinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, guys, that's it for this video. There'll be links to everything relevant in the description of this video. I'll try to put as much of this information into text form as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon. Visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.